So my name's Jonathan, and so I have it on my heart. I feel like the Lord told me about 6 or 7 weeks ago that my testimony would actually be beneficial for the time we're in, the time we're going into, whatever that looks like. I have no agenda really other than to be obedient to Him. My heart has been seeing where people are becoming fearful, anxious. They're picking sides. Some are trusting in the government, some aren't trusting in the government, some are fighting it, some are willing to pick up arms, and there's just all this chaos. A lot of the believers aren't quite sure what to do, what side to be on, how to look to Jesus. Do we follow the law? Do we not? Do we, we're scrambling. And I believe right now the war that's going on is actually for our fascination, the captivation. Where are the eyes of our hearts staring? So just like testimonies of drugs help people believe that God can do something for them, just like testimonies of restorations of marriages can bring hope to a marriage that is falling apart, to say God can do it. I'm hoping that this part of my story, this part of my testimony will actually give us confidence that we can actually trust in the Lord, even if the government is for us or against us, even if everyone around us is for us or against us. God is higher than that. He's bigger than that. The scriptures that we read and we quote all the time are actually true. 10 years ago I got saved, and many people don't know this part of my story. I don't really talk about it. You'll hear in part of my story, God said, live like it never happened, talking about what you're about to listen to. And I tried to live by that as best I could. I didn't talk about it. It was mixed with maybe a little fear, with the circumstances, mixed with the Lord said, don't live like it never happened. The fear of a lot of people heard my testimony is actually put in condemnation, and I wish my testimony was that powerful. People were filled with insecurity, so my testimony wasn't encouraging them. It was actually condemning them. And so a mixture of all that stuff, I just didn't share too much of it. So just like a lot of people in the Midwest, I was raised in church, didn't really see much benefit to it, didn't understand what it was really about. Parents got divorced, moved to a different town, knew not to cuss, don't drink, don't smoke, don't mess around with girls, all the like typical external things, but I never had a real encounter with the Lord. Went to high school, started smoking a lot of pot. The day that I started smoking every single day after that. Once I did it, I loved it, and then every day. Quit football my junior year, and then that progressed into drinking a lot, different drugs. And so by the time I get 20, tired of my life, nights are bleeding together, days are bleeding together. I can't remember what's going on in my life until I look on Facebook, see the pictures, and it began to bother me. And I remember I went to Bonnaroo, which is like a drug music festival, and this really opened my eyes, not in the sense of salvation, but opened my eyes that I remember I crossed multiple lines of drugs I never would do. There's certain rules I had of drugs not to do, and I crossed them. And I realized at that time at a drug festival, I remember watching Jay-Z. I was on ecstasy, and that was a line I wouldn't cross, but I did it twice in like 14 hours or something. I was sitting there and I was watching Jay-Z, and I was just having you're having a good time, and all of a sudden I looked up on the stage, and just this dream I used to have when I was younger hit me as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And at that time I didn't know who they were, just the story I remember hearing when I was at school, and then bowing down to an idol. And I realized they had the Hova sign up, which is Jay-Z's sign, had the Hova sign up, put it up. I remember putting my hands up, 2 screens on both sides. Jay-Z's up on the stage with his arms out. The silhouette of him looked like a cross. I'm going, Hova. And it literally sounds like, as soon as we start saying Hova, and I looked up in the screens, it looked like everyone was bowing down, and it sounded like Jehovah. And I remember my knees buckled. I literally almost fell down. I turned around, saw thousands of people look like they were bowing down, and I felt this there's like evilness on the wind is the only way I could describe it. And I remember I realized in that moment, I am no longer in control of my life. I'm being manipulated. I am literally worshiping a man, something, and I just realized I was sobered up in a moment. That dream hit me when I was younger, hit me like a ton of bricks. My knees buckled. I turned around and I realized I'm at a drug festival doing drugs. How did I get here? That moment passed, my high came back, but that moment stained me. At this point, me and my mom had like this non-spoken agreement that if I go to church on Sundays, I can do whatever I want as long as I'm church on Sundays. So I didn't miss a Sunday for this whole time of drug use. I maybe missed 2 or 3 when I ran to Florida for spring breaks or Bonnaroo and all this stuff. But every Sunday I would get there. I remember some guy wanted people to go to Haiti. I just felt like I wanted to go. And at this point in my life, I convinced myself. I enjoyed, somehow I was trying to mix spirituality with my drug use. And so I started going into New Age, trying to figure out how can I be spiritual, but then I don't want to change. And deep inside, I knew Jesus. I thought he was a buzzkill. I didn't like when people mentioned his name because it sobered me up. But any other God, Krishna, Buddhism, like if we talk about Buddhism, all these other religions, that New Age universe, whatever we wanted to call it, never really did the same thing. But I knew if I believed Jesus, he was going to make me change. My plan was I was going to go to these different cultures, do their drugs, because I realized most of these cultures, they do drugs to meet their gods. I was going to do their drugs and meet their gods. And then after that, I was going to decide which God I wanted to follow. Africa, you can go. I found this organization. I'd go couch surf, but then I could go into work in a different country, and then hoping my friendships would lead me deeper into the Amazon to these guys that do ayahuasca, or go to Africa and go to these like places where you do these man rituals. You do their drugs, and then you become part of the tribe, but you meet these gods. This is literally what my heart was to do. And then after that, I was going to decide. And so when I went to church with my mom, they were talking about Haiti, and I remember I was like, I'll go. And I remember saying to God, I didn't know what God I was talking to. I just said, God, I'll do one good thing for mankind. And that was when the earthquake hit Haiti 10 or so years ago. And so I said, I'm going to go do one good thing for mankind, but after this, I'm living my life talking. I'm going to go travel and meet these other gods. Went to Haiti, got overwhelmed for how selfish I was, how arrogant I was, how much money I was spending on, drugs. I was just overwhelmed, didn't get saved. And at this point, I'm trying to change. I stopped drinking at that point because I wasn't 21, it was against the law. I stopped doing mushrooms. I stopped every kind of drug except for pot. Pot was like my thing. I smoked every day. It's all natural. I used all the excuses. God created it. All the excuses that people make. But pot, I could give up everything, but pot was my main thing. And so my cousin at that time, I hadn't seen him in like 10 years. We came in contact with each other out of nowhere, and we always thought about going on an adventure when we got older. So I hadn't seen him for 10 years. All of a sudden he's there. He says, hey man, you want to go to Nicaragua? Sure. So we had this big plan. But I really was wanting to go. I wanted to see if Jesus was real. That Haiti thing was a Christian mission trip, but it changed me. It showed me something that I hadn't seen. I thought I was saved, but looking back, I was on the journey of salvation. I smoked pot the last day we went. Smoked my last bowl. I said, I'm going to give this up. Went to Nicaragua. He sold his truck, bought us tickets. We both quit our jobs. I was doing insurance and all this stuff. Quit our jobs, and we just went. We were going to go for 3 months. We bought a two-way passes, or tickets, one there and one back, 3 months apart. We wanted to go and preach the gospel, go everywhere we go. And I was really saying, I remember going with the heart of like reading Acts. At this point, I'm reading the Bible. Of course, I'm getting high, reading the Bible. Acts intrigued me, and I said, God, if you're the God of Acts, I will follow you. If God is the God of Acts, if this is the same God, I want this God. But if it's not this God, if it's only what I've seen, I don't want it. I don't want just a new language. Bless your brother, love your brother, and all this stuff, but have bitterness in my heart. I didn't want a new schedule. I didn't want to be busy on Sundays and Wednesdays and everything else looks kind of the same. I wanted something sincere. I wanted something real, and I didn't really know who to run to or go to, so I said, okay, let's go. So we just went by faith. At this point I thought I was saved, but I don't think I was. I grew up around it. That's about how saved I was. And so we sold everything, quit our jobs, headed over there. We bought a ticket there and a ticket back 3 months apart. So we were just going to be there for 3 months, see what would happen, go and preach the gospel, do some other things, and see what happened. So we went to Nicaragua. He thought he could remember where he lived, which is, crazy now looking back at it. He's like, I think I can get us there. So they built a house as missionaries, left, and then people just kind of took it over. So somehow we got on these back roads in Nicaragua, found the house. There's a lady with 2 kids living in it, so we didn't want to kick her out, so we just slept outside for a couple days in hammocks, which was, looking back now, I remember how scared I was sleeping in the dark out in the middle of a place that I didn't know. So we remember we went to church with these people. Couldn't really speak. We finally got friendships with them. They invited us in. The kid was trying to teach me Spanish. I was trying to teach him English. Wasn't going very far. But I remember going to church. We show up to this church. I don't even know where we were. And we came across this guy. He spoke English. We were talking to him, and he was a rough guy. We met this guy, and for some reason, we thought we needed a gun. So you can't just go to Nicaragua, find a gun. You have to find someone that's willing to sell you a gun. So we came across a guy that would sell us a gun. So we went into his house, talked to him about buying a gun. We figured we needed a gun for Nicaragua. 2 white guys, looked super touristy with the camera. We stuck out. So this guy, he said he has a gun. We left to go get money. My cousin accidentally said, "Oh, we got plenty of money. We'll just go get it, and we'll just pay you whatever you need when you get it." And I was very nervous when I heard that, because when we got in the taxi, I said, "Man, you just told them we have a lot of money, and we'll go get enough money, and when we come back, we'll just pay you what you want. They're gonna rob us when we get back." And he's like, "Man, I didn't even think about that." And then he said he prayed about it and he felt peace. So he felt peace. I did not feel peace. So we go and get the money. We stick some in our shoe, put a little bit in our wallet. So if they rob us, we give our wallet to them, and we just call it even. So we pull up, and there's a whole bunch of dudes. There's like 6 guys. A couple of them are drinking, and they're loud. So we get out. They start talking to my cousin. My cousin starts stuttering. He starts, and they start making like, "You can't stutter in this part of town. Do you guys know where you are? Like, we could kill you and no one will ever know that you're gone. They will never find your bodies." I mean, just saying, like, if they're serious or not, it's a very intense moment. I'm sitting back. My cousin's trying to talk ourselves out of the situation. I'm thinking they're about to hit him, and I'm gonna have to decide who do I punch first, because as soon as I hit someone, I'm getting hit, but I can at least try to get maybe the biggest one or something. I don't know. Realize this guy's a boxer, and he just is trying to intimidate us, and it's working. I'm sitting back watching it, and all of a sudden I realize this guy that we were going to buy the gun from is sitting there, and he's kind of watching us. I can tell the guys are kind of looking at him like for direction. And then finally, I start sharing, "Hey guys, like, we don't want any problems. I'm honestly here. We're here for the gospel." At that point, I'm just trying to share the gospel at that point. And then finally, when I did that, the big guy told everyone to shut up. I want to listen to this kid. So as soon as I saw that he cared, I went to the side and grabbed him and said, "Hey man," started talking to him. My cousin started talking to these other guys. I started talking to this big guy, and I was just honest with him, "Man, I did drugs. I'm here trying to figure out what's wrong. Like, I'm trying to find Jesus. I'm trying to figure out, I want to know if this is real." And he starts tearing up. He starts telling about he got kicked out of the States. His grandma, he always loved his grandma, and his grandma wanted him to live a godly life. But he's moved over there. He got back into his life. His kids are growing up in a bad atmosphere. And he just starts tearing up. And I mean, at this point, I'm not preaching the gospel necessarily, other than, dude, this is where I'm at. I'm trying to change. And then we just started hugging each other. We were just like, had this amazing moment. My cousin at the same time, the guy what's all tatted up with a LeBron James jersey on, starts calling him, you're ignorant, you think you can be here in this part of town? And just, he wasn't calling him ignorant, he kept calling him the street slang name. Like, I don't know what it was, like some Spanish slang name. He said, what? And he was a very not theological, but he knew his different religions. He says, why is Jesus any better than all of these other things? And all these other religions, they have all this other stuff. My cousin, he starts saying the slang word. What does this mean? If your God's so real, what does this mean? And my cousin just says, ignorant, you know? And as soon as the guy heard it, that word just hit him, and he says, your God's real. And so he flips around, comes next to my cousin. I look over, and my cousin's actually preaching the gospel to the crowd of people that at this point have gathered around us because of how, you know, it's a scene at this point. He starts translating the gospel from my cousin to everyone. And then I'm over here hugging this and crying with this big guy, and and then we all become good friends, and and then they wanted us to spend the night, but I said, hey man, we gotta go. I don't really want to spend the night. You know, at that point I'm scared, you know, still scared because we just got out of a situation that we shouldn't have been in, never got the gun. So that was a crazy moment for us to be in that situation. So we came back, told it to the lady that was the house we were staying at. She was like amazed because she knew this man. She said, that him? We're like, yeah, that guy, he was crying, you know. She's like, you know, she was overwhelmed. So we stayed there a couple more days. Then we went so this is a week. That's been 1 week. So this is the beginning of the second week. So we get in a taxi cab. We talk to this taxi cab driver. He's like a police officer, but he drives around for some extra money or something. I'm not sure. So he takes us to this town that we're wanting to go to. There's a language school. So we wanted to learn how to speak Spanish so that we could go around and share the gospel. So we go to this place, tell them our names. Hey, we're staying up there. You know, thanks for driving us, blah, blah, blah. So this is where the story is. This is the emphasis of the story, is what's about to happen. So we get to this city. I remember walking up the mountain to the place we were staying. I remember passing a guy. His eyes were glazed. I thought he was a drunk. He had that glossy look over his eyes. I thought he was a drunk. Just walked past him. Went up to our room. Again, I'm not born again, but I'm like really reading the scriptures at this point. I'm trying to figure out, my whole mentality is works. What can I do to get God to love me? So we're praying, you know, God, do whatever you want to do in us. Like, lead the people. We literally said, lead the people to us that you want us to speak to. You know, after we get settled in, we hear a knock on the door. Pop, pop, pop. We open it. The guy's just like, hey, are you guys, for some reason he asked us if we were Mormons. We're like, no, we're not Mormons, we're Christians, you know. It's like, okay, you know, and he said, I would love to talk to you guys. And we're like, cool. And something happened, he just took off. And so we're like, all right. So we didn't really think much about it. We went back inside, and then it hit us. God, we just prayed that you would lead someone to us that we were supposed to talk to. And so we're like, okay. So then we prayed, God, if that was you, just bring him back, blah, 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 all that stuff. So this guy comes back, knocks on the door. At this point, I thought he was just a drunk, still just a drunk. I thought he was just a drunk that was wanting to talk to some Christians, you know. Knocks on the door. My cousin starts speaking to him. My cousin spoke Spanish. I didn't. So when he would speak to him, I just sit there and pray, you know, because that's the right answer, you know. So I knew all the Christian things to do. Anyways, thought I was saved. So all of a sudden, they talk for a little bit, and then the guy darts off again. And I look at my cousin and say, what was that all about? He said, dude, this guy has a ton of information. He used to work for a cartel, got saved, and now he has all this information, and he wants to tell someone that can actually do something with it. So I realized the tears, the glossy eyes, I don't think were a part of being drunk. I think he wept. The more we got to know him, we realized he just wept over a city. He prayed over this city. He said this city's like Corinth. This place has gone downhill. Drugs have ravished it. You know, he's talking about witches and how they fast and they cast out demons. And I had never been a part of it. I had never even, so my prayer of like, God, if you're the God of Acts, and then all of a sudden this guy is talking verbiage that I've never heard in my sphere of Christians. This guy used to work for the cartel, has all this information, and he can't do anything about it. And for some reason he thinks we can, because we're white, we're Americans, and we have more connections, I guess. And so I was like, and I remember sitting there saying, I don't know if I want to get involved in this. Again, I'm reading the Bible. This is why I'm here. I want to change. So I flipped open my Bible. I flipped over to Matthew. I don't know anything about the Bible. I'm just flipping it open, trusting that, I'm just praying, God help me. What do I do? What do I do when a guy with all this information comes? What am I supposed to do? So I opened up the Bible and said, blessed are those that are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for they shall inherit the kingdom. So at that point, I want to inherit the kingdom, this is why I'm here. So I guess if I have to die, let's do it. I wasn't thinking it, but I saw that's how you inherit. So therefore, with my works mindset, this is what I do, and I'll inherit the kingdom. Me and my cousin were talking. I said, okay, man, if he wants to come and tell us, let's hear him out. It's just this in and out kind of relationship for a couple days. So he asked us to go to his church. They cast out demons. They pray for witches, all this stuff that really intrigued me, and this is why I'm here. So this right here is why I'm here. And so I go into this church with this attitude, just straight arrogance, just straight like, I'm better, look what I did, show up. So I'm at the church service. We go and we're there early. So we're just praying. It's a small church. We're sitting there praying, and then people begin to walk in before service, and people are just walking around the small little room, and they're praying. And so I can hear them praying. I don't know what they're saying, but they're praying, but I can tell what's coming outside. Something's coming out of them that is not coming out of me. My whole prayer is, God, forgive me. God, I'm horrible. I don't really have an interaction with the Lord. All I'm doing is saying how crappy I am. God, I want to do better. Please help me. Just kind of, but them, I remember it convicted me. And at that point I didn't know what conviction was, but it did something inside of me that made me realize these people do this, these people live this life, and it challenged my arrogance that I came in with. I'm here for a moment, but these people live this way. But I remember that encounter that I had exposed me, and I remember sitting there in the front saying, God, if you're real, you can translate what this guy's saying. So I'm sitting there, don't know anything that's going on, can't understand it, but I'm just in my head. The verbiage that I have in my head is I want to do good, but I'm still tied to my past. I'm still tied to the drugs. I'm still tied to certain relationships. I'm still tied to drinking. Man, God, I want to move forward, but I'm still tied. I'm still tied. All these things, I could just see all these things, and I was just mentioning all these things that I was tied to. Get up, everyone hugs, thanks us for coming because we're visitors, and yeah. So we walk out, and I'm walking to the room. My cousin comes running to me and says, do you know what the sermon was about? All excited. It's no, I have no idea. Short with him. No, dude, I don't speak Spanish, man. And he said it was about cutting ties to your past. And so I remember when he said that, it shook me. It almost made me numb, in the sense of I don't actually remember the walk from the church back to our room. I just remember getting back to the room, sitting down, my cousin got in the shower, and I just sat there. And this voice that I ignored my entire life, all of a sudden got a name. His Holy Ghost. And I realized God was actually speaking to me my entire life, and I actually didn't know it. He was actually the voice that was always trying to lead me. He wasn't the one punching me in the head, putting his thumb on my head saying, you idiot. He wasn't the one bringing the cops. He was the one saying, if you go where drugs are, cops will. He was the one always trying to woo me out of situations that always got me in trouble. And when I realized that voice got a name, I remember I was sitting down, because I always wanted to say yes to the ability not to go to a party. I always wanted to say yes to not lie to my mom when she asked me a question. I always had that feeling of I probably shouldn't lie, but then I would just lie, The voice that I would be sleeping and I'd be so drunk and so high, but in that moment I'm more sober than ever, because I'm what is going, what am I doing with my life? Realizing that voice, what am I doing with my life, was not my own voice. Is this voice that was always leading me and guiding me out of these situations. That voice got a name. And I remember when that voice got a name, Holy Spirit, I remember my weight was lifted off, my addictions were lifted off, everything was lifted off. Born again, overwhelmed, and I remember all I said, I didn't say a prayer, I just said, I can finally say yes. This guy comes back the next day because now we have this deeper relationship. We went to church with him, so now he trusts us a little bit more. So we get back. He starts telling us all this information. I don't need to go into all the information, but it was a lot about drugs, a lot of stuff. We go down to the beach. All we know is movies, so I'm on the beach with the camera. My cousin's interviewing him, and he's just telling all this stuff. He's nervous. He keeps cutting it off because he's looking over his shoulder, and then finally we get it. We call the cop that drove us to the place we were at. We called him thinking, hey, God led us. At this point I'm actually saved. God led us. I'm excited about God. Like, not because I'm supposed to be, but like I'm genuinely, dude, like that God's real, So this guy, like God gave us this guy. He drove us here. He's a cop. Let's just call him and tell him what we knew, So we called him. We tell him, hey man, did you know this, and this is happening? And my cousin's talking to him. I can hear him screaming through the phone. Don't know what he's saying, but I can hear how intense it was. My cousin shut the phone and says, we just talked to the wrong man. So I was like, oh, we were both like, crap. He not only does he know we told him what we knew, he knows where we are, and if he can remember, and he knows where we are. He knows what city we're in. So at that point, we're kind of like, they know. My cousin, since he used to live there, he called around some places, but then we got an embassy number. So we called the embassy in down there. We called the embassy. They kind of shrugged us off and said, hey, do you guys know this, and this is happening? Oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. They didn't really believe us. We get a call back a little bit longer and say, hey, from someone higher up, how do you guys know this? How do you guys know what's going on here? And we just said, hey, a guy just came and told us all this stuff, and we got it on film, and we got all this information. So this guy was like, okay, so send me all your information. We get on the computer, we send it all to him, send him our information. He says, can you meet me in this town halfway? So I said, this was Thursday. So we said, okay, we'll meet you there. So at this point, it's pretty dark. So we're trying to decide, after calling the cop, we're kind of afraid of like, do we stay a night here or do we just leave? So we ended up spending the night there at that same place, got up in the morning and just went to this town that we were supposed to meet this guy from the embassy. At this point, fear is like for real, just because the cop knows, that's pretty much it. But a little bit of hope because we're meeting someone, someone we can trust, go there. And it's just like a movie, a bad movie. We get there, we get a room, a place. There's bars on the wall. I don't know how common it is, but there's bars on, the rooms and stuff. So we get there. My cousin leaves. He's going to a shop to like upload some stuff. I try to figure out where this guy's at that's supposed to be meeting us. He's not there, all this stuff. I sit in the room. And there must be some festival going on, so there's fireworks going off everywhere. There's screaming and cheering, but like in my mind, it is just like every pop is like every pop is like causing me to like look over my shoulder. I'm pretty afraid. I'm set in this town, don't know Spanish. I literally am beginning. My mind is being drawn into fear, paranoia. The sounds around me. Things going on inside of me. I'm meditating so much on the circumstances, the situations, the external realities that are going on that it's beginning to like put fear and desires and mindsets in me that I actually think my cousin, he's dead. I hear him run. I hear someone come flying in the door, get through the gate. We gotta go. So I'm like thinking, he found the guy. We gotta go meet him. He's in a hurry. Let's go. So I just start throwing stuff in the bag, And it's dark at this point, throwing stuff in the bag, and he's telling me, he's like, dude, my dad had a dream, a couple days ago, before he didn't know all this stuff, he said, my dad had a dream a couple days ago that you died, and I felt bad about it. And I was like, that's the scenario, like, and at that point, so all my fear that was built up in that just got confirmed by this dream. So at that point, fear has just consumed me at this point. There's a taxi cab sitting there and it's dark, and the embassy guy never showed up. Take us to the airport, because my dad said, get out of there, So we're like, all right, so we get in the taxi, we start going to the airport. It's like a couple hour drive. So we're just going there. My cousin's making all these calls. And at this point, your mind's going crazy. I'm worth some money right now. I have some information, blah, 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 blah. I mean, your mind is just in chaos at this point. And I remember, so at this point, I'm 2 days saved. This is Friday. 2 days saved. So I'm still not understanding salvation to the fullness. I remember praying, God, if you can get me home, you can have my family, you can have my friends, and I will not do drugs ever again. Just get me home. Get to the airport. Airport's closed. No more flights going out. So we have to stay at the hotel across. Again, movies. All we know is movies. So they ask for our name and our passport number. So we're making up names, putting up fake passport numbers, sleeping. I'm sleeping right by the bed, or right by the window. I can't sleep because I'm just looking at this window. This all happened within days. So this is just like building and building and building, and nothing, we're thinking we're going to get straight to the airport, get on and go. Nope, we got to sleep another night with all this information in a room, in a place where we're using fake names, and so we don't want to get caught with that. Just all this stuff. Finally, we get up, run across, get in the airport, had just the amount of money to change our 3 month out. This is 2 weeks into our trip. We're supposed to be the 3 months. Had just the amount of money to pull it out and put it into this new ticket, get on the plane, and we just start laughing. What else are you going to do? We just sat there and we were on the plane and we could breathe, and we just started laughing. We're like, ooh, nice. We're safe. We get to my cousin's parents' house, hand his dad the tape, Spanish, listens to it. We're coming there. My mom, I think, is there. I can't remember, but my cousin's mom's there, and we're just telling him that this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. His dad comes in and said, he said, this is a lot of information. He said, good thing you got out of there. There might be a time where we can't have our hope in the government. We definitely can't have hope in our own strength. So when we get back, he calls someone, says, hey, my son and me came back with all this information. What do you want to do? The guy started helping us out. This is what he said. There's a certain group of people I couldn't interact with. He said that you've messed with the wrong people. If they want you dead, you're dead. So we thought we were home safe. Not so much. He told us, sit in the corners of rooms, carry a gun with you. So all this stuff that is like feeding paranoia. But now I have permission from this guy that's sincerely trying to help us, to giving me permission now to be paranoid, to be afraid, to be worried. This scenario is real. It's even more real than I thought it was, because I thought I was safe once I got back on our soil. He couldn't do witness protection until something happened to me and my cousin, or the guy down in the place that knocked on our door. And so I'm realizing, for this time, I'm realizing God actually took my answer serious. You can have my family, you can have my friends, and I'm realizing, wow, okay, this is actually happening. I'm scared. I'm not telling much of anything. I'm coming home. My mom, I'm telling her a little bit of what she needs to know, but not a lot, because I'm figuring the less people know, the better, because if something happens, I don't want them to have information, blah, blah, blah. So this guy that was helping us out, he said, do not trust anyone at this point. This people you're interacting with, they have the ability to figure out where you are, who you are, through even our government. They can't do anything with the witness protection until something happens. So he said, maybe if you go change your name, when they send a pond up to you, maybe they can't find you, some loops or whatever. So we're like, all right, we'll go change our name, make our paperwork, go to the courthouse. But I remember the day before I was going to get ready to go to the courthouse, show up, my mom's there, my stepdad's there. He found out what was going on. He changed his name, had a mess, put a mess in his life, messed up his name from his social security number, and it just jumbled all that stuff up his entire life. But he's just saying, do not change your social security number. It'll ruin the rest of your life. They probably think I'm exaggerating at some point because I was in drugs. So they probably think, there's a lot of things that people don't trust, So I remember leaving that. I remember going downstairs in my room. I remember sitting down on my bed and I said, God, what do I do? I have the government telling me one thing. I have my family telling me another thing. What do I do? I'm talking about changing my name or not changing my name. And the clearest I've ever heard him, I don't know if it was audible, I have no idea, but it like shook me. I just heard, live like it never happened. That is the craziest thought I ever heard, but I could taste the okay, that's the first sound advice that I heard. I went to church that next Sunday. One of the guys was a local police. Hey man, you're back. And I'm like, yeah, but I went through some stuff. And he's like, and he could kind of tell, what do you mean? I was like, well, I just got mixed up with some stuff, He's like, well, if you want to talk about it, come by the office and we can talk about it. I said, okay. Told him a little bit of stuff. He's like, dude, come by the station. I was like, okay. That same day, this guy that was getting ready to go to India came running up to me because he heard, he's back, not that I was a big deal in the sense, but I was this druggy change getting ready to go to a different country. And so he said, hey man, he came running up to me, hey man, you want to go to India? Dude, nope, can't go to India. He said, no, I'll pay for your trip. If you go with me, man, it'd be so awesome. Like, we'll go. And I said, no man, I can't. And then I heard that, live like it never happened. So this is the moment of truth. Do I go by what the Lord says, what the government says, what my parents say, what my own wisdom says? Live like it never happened. I remember looking at him saying, dude, I'll go. He said, awesome, man. Okay, cool. We're going in March. I was like, all right, cool, excited, but inside like, oh my goodness, Anyway, went to the station. Someone sat us down, talked to us, FBI. So you really want me to, for the first time I'm saved, so you know how you're just an open book after you get saved. Dude, I did drugs until I went, blah, 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 blah. I was just like, dude, I got changed, just ask me any question, I'll tell you anything. I did drugs the day I left before Nicaragua. And the guy that was talking to us earlier said, don't trust anyone. So I'm telling him enough, but not too much. Not that he was bad, but he just said, hey, you don't need to talk to anyone, talk to me, So I was like, all right. He said, you really want me to believe this? Say, God told you to go to Nicaragua. A man came and knocked on the door and told you everything that you're telling me. And we didn't tell him too much, we just told him a little bit. And I said, dude, yeah. And that's when I said, I used to do drugs. Dude, I got saved. I got nothing to hide, So it was a little bad cop kind of thing. Not too bad, but just kind of pushing us a little bit. We left. At that point, I was carrying a gun in my car because I don't know what else I'm doing. The cops, I said, hey guys, I'm carrying a gun in my car. They said, hey, don't worry about it. If you get pulled over, we'll just figure out. So I remember that night, driving home, circling the neighborhood because that's what I'm supposed to do, see if anyone's abnormal. But if you have that mindset, everything's abnormal, going around the room. And I remember I could feel, and I had this gun in my truck. And I remember driving around my neighborhood, and paranoia and fear is becoming so real that I have actually begun to lose the excitement of the salvation that I experienced on the Wednesday before that. The flood of joy that hit me has been robbed with fear, anxiety, overwhelming, permission to be afraid, permission to have prejudices, permission to have all these things that the world has told me to have. But the Lord said, live like it never happened. It has come to this moment, I realized I am scared to death. And I remember that moment, I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to live like it never happened. So I stopped driving around the neighborhood, got the gun out of my car because I didn't want to, what am I going to do with that anyways? I got convicted even carrying it because if someone pulls a gun on me, then I pull a gun and then what happens, And so fear is literally beginning to lead my life. So that was the kind of the bad cop scenario. So I remember going to the gym. This guy came up, sat down. Hey, are you Jonathan? Yeah. Hey, sit down with me. Let's talk a little bit. It's more friendly, more casual. He says, hey, I'm a friend, and I heard what went on down there. You want to tell me about it? He had the same scenario. You really want me to believe? He said, you know how crazy that sounds? I said, man. And I know how crazy this sounds, but this is what happened. He said, okay. He said, but what I can tell you, he said, I looked your name up, you're red flagged. I still don't even know what that necessarily means other than what he has told me. So I haven't looked it up. I mean, he said, you're red flagged. You're considered a cartel, and they will let you leave the country, but they will not let you back in. It seems like we gave them this information. They think we double-crossed because we went over there to do to be a part of cartel, got in a situation, came back and sold out our guys. And so now they're waiting to see. No one gets this kind of information unless you're part of the cartel. So I'm realizing, wow, they're not necessarily for me. You know, like they actually think this is my fault. So he actually said, you can leave the country, but they will not let you back in. So I was like, okay. But I said, but I just told a man that I'm going to India because I lived like it never happened. And I'm pretty convinced at this point that I'm seeing God's just building grace and strength in me to like really believe this voice. Like this voice I ignored my entire life said live like it never happened. He said, dude, I would highly suggest you do not go to India. If you go to India, they will not let you back in the country. But it actually cultivated this relationship that I can only look to the Lord because no one can relate to me. No one will give me wisdom that is godly because everyone's just giving me wisdom that how they would react. Well, I'd carry a gun. Well, I would be afraid. Like they're just giving me human wisdom. And I told God, I don't want a new language. I want a new life. Everything's trying to fascinate me, captivate me to many voices. But his voice said live like it never happened. So that means carrying a gun. That means circling my neighborhood. That means sitting in the corners of restaurants so I can see what's going on in restaurants. That means the prejudices that told me to say, hey, don't talk to this and this and this in person. All this stuff, and it's actually permission from the government, from my family, but no one really trusts me because it's too outlandish, you know. So everyone's waiting for something to like be exposed so they can, you know, I'm a liar, or I don't know. They don't know what to do with me because I've been in drugs, you know. 3 months go by. This whole time I'm getting ready to go to India. And honestly, I'm sincerely trying to live like it never happened. I don't really talk about it. I live like it never happened. I get on with my daily life. Sometimes fear would try to grip me when I leave my house to go somewhere, and I have to, God, you said to live like it never happened. We're getting ready to go to India. We're going for 4 weeks. Getting ready to go to India. Tell all the guys that are going, just say, hey guys, I don't know what traveling looks like traveling with me, but this is what's going on in my life. So I have no idea what this looks like. My heart was kind of like, God, if you want me in India, I'll stay in India. So I'm going to India. This is where my heart is, or this is where my heart of house fellowships, talking to people that had similar stories to mine. Of course, not the cartel, but just stories of faith and perseverance and not letting fear consume them because everyone else, when I did mention my story, insecurities and like, oh, you know, well, brother, you got to be wise. Like, you got to use wisdom, brother. You know, every time I would say I'm going to India, hey, God, like, hey, you got to use wisdom. God gave you a brain, you know, and which is fine, but I just didn't listen to it. There was no life in it. I could tell what they're saying is not the same voice that I heard in my room that said, live like it never happened. It was not the same. They quoted scriptures and words, but you could tell it was not the same. It didn't bring life to me. It actually was inviting fear, anxiety, and worry back into my life. And so we went to India, and it was kind of like a joke. Hey, I hope I can come back to America. I hope, you know, even Tim Ray. Hey, Tim Ray, can I sleep here if I don't come? And so it was this ongoing joke. That's all I could do was kind of laugh about it. And everyone around me thought it was the coolest story, but for me, it was my real life. Like this trip determines where I am or where I'm not. Once I get back into the customs of America, this is the moment of truth. They'll let me leave, no problem. They won't let me back in. So I'm sitting in line, and my heart is racing like crazy. Your mind's going, cavity searches? Man, what is a cavity search? Oh my goodness, they're probably gonna do some crazy stuff to me. You know, like all you've seen is movies. I mean, you are just sitting there, and I hear over the intercom, sorry for the inconvenience, the computers have shut down. Anyone with an American passport can come in. So we're like back of the line because I'm not in a rush to get to the front of the line. So we get to walk past all these people, a lot of Indians, walk past all these people, go through the line, and I'm thinking, you know, your mind, this is what happens when you don't put your mind on the Lord. You're thinking my picture's posted up behind this thing. You think that I'm something special. They're looking for me, like the U.S. is looking for me and all this stuff. And I remember going by, handing her my passport. She can't scan it. Because according to the guy that sat me down, the FBI or DEA, I can't remember, if they scan it, they're going to see a red flag, whatever that means, and they will not let me back in. She looks at it, realizes it's a U.S. passport, gives it back to me, and I walk through, and my friend, the guys that went to the trip are on the other side, and we just start freaking out. So that was like my first 3 months of salvation, but I realized real soon, even when the government's not for you, they might not be actively against you, but even if they are, but if they're not for you, God is bigger. Even if everyone around you is quoting the wisdom of the world, brother, you need to do this, you need to do this, but it's not the voice of Jesus and what, obviously the scriptures are very clear about laying down our lives, it doesn't matter. And so I'm personally concerned for where I think this testimony would help is that we're fascinated with everything but the voice of Jesus. In this time of my short 3 months, changed me because I realized I do not put my confidence in the government. I do not put my confidence in the wisdom of the world. I do not put my confidence in self-preservation because none of that has to do with the gospel. And so when I came back, I'm so excited for Jesus that people are going to try. And I finally believe the stories of David and Goliath. And I can't even share my stories because people are so insecure. They're telling me, you got to use wisdom, brother. And I can't even share my story because not only would that cause a division, it would make me high-minded and proud and make them feel belittled and condemned. But obviously the Lord said, I feel like your testimony will be beneficial for this time. I'm not going to say what for, but what I am going to say is that we got to get our eyes off of the government and we got to get them on Jesus. If the government's for us, my answer's still the same. Look to Jesus. If my government's against me, the answer's still the same. Look to Jesus. If my family is for me, still the same answer. Look to Jesus. If they're against me, look to Jesus. I realized through all of this, as soon as I got my eyes off of Jesus, I didn't actually know what to do. All of a sudden, I would begin to submit to worry and fear, and I had permission from the government, from the police, to carry a gun. I had permission to be prejudiced in my heart. Don't talk to these kind of people because you never know who's coming up against you. Or I had permission from fear. So people and men and the government gave me permission that the gospel never gave me.